Merci.
We had a bridge exercise where you can draw whatever type of bridge you want and basically where you are on the shore, where you want to get to, and what the bridge will let you get over the obstacles. And I had one woman draw the most rickety bridge, rope bridge, wood planks are missing, rapids below her. And she's like, why did I draw such a rickety bridge? Like, I could have drawn any bridge. But that's what symbolized how she was feeling.
Hi, I'm Dr. Irena O'Brien, and you're listening to Neuroscience of Coaching. I'm a cognitive neuroscientist with almost 30 years of study and practice in psychology and neuroscience. And as the founder of the Neuroscience School, I teach coaches and other wellness professionals real-world, evidence-based strategies to use in their own practices. In each episode, I invite a seasoned coach to discuss a topic that affects our field, and together we provide you with science-based tools to help your clients reach their goals by working with their brains to create results that last. Today, we're exploring a coaching tool that may seem simple on the surface, but is actually rooted in some very powerful neuroscience: drawing. When people hear drawing in coaching, they sometimes imagine art therapy, or maybe something creative that they don't think they're good enough to do. But what we're talking about today has nothing to do with artistic skill. It's about using visual expression as a pathway to awareness, emotional regulation, and genuine change. The reason drawing works so well is that it engages the brain in ways that conversation alone simply can't. When a client draws, even simple shapes, lines, or symbols, multiple brain regions begin to collaborate. The visual cortex processes shape and color. The motor cortex guides the movement of the hand, and the prefrontal cortex organizes intention and meaning. That whole brain integration creates the perfect conditions for new insights. We often talk on this podcast about neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new neural connections throughout life. Drawing is one of those activities that stimulates plasticity very directly. When clients sketch out a challenge, a goal, or even something abstract that they're struggling to articulate verbally, they're activating networks that promote flexibility rather than rigidity. It helps shift them out of repetitive thought patterns and into new mental territory. And there's something else. Drawing can access parts of our internal world that don't always have words. When a client draws a symbol for a fear, or a line that represents a boundary, or a shape that reflects a desire, they're tapping into subconscious information that the analytic mind often filters out. This is why structured drawing methods, like neurographica, can be so transformative. They use visual language to open doors that the verbal mind keeps closed. There's also a calming, regulating effect. The rhythmic, intentional movement of drawing helps lower stress hormones and supports the neurochemistry associated with focus, presence, and emotional balance. Many clients naturally fall into a light flow state, that relaxed but attentive space where creativity and clarity come together. Over time, drawing can help clients break out of stuckness, visualize their goals and obstacles in concrete ways, and see patterns that would never have emerged through conversation alone. Coaches use it to help clients deepen awareness, increase mindfulness, and generate meaningful insights that they feel in their bodies, not just understand intellectually. So today's conversation is all about how coaches can bring this evidence-informed practice into their work. You don't need to be artistic. You don't need special materials. What you need is curiosity, willingness, and a sense of openness to where the lines and shapes may lead. So let's explore how drawing can become a catalyst for real, self-directed change. Today, I'm joined by Lexi Reid, a creative wellness coach, as well as a quality and regulatory specialist in the medical device world. Lexi helps high-achieving women in STEM reduce stress and prevent burnout through simple, science-informed creative practices. Through her brand, Mind Art Wellness, Lexi leads a 12-week creative reset group coaching program, offers one-on-one coaching, and hosts the Creative Shift newsletter, where she shares low-pressure drawing and color-based exercises that support the nervous system. She also happens to be one of my neuroscience school students. So I'm especially excited to explore her work and perspective with you today. Lexi, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Hi, Irena. It's lovely to be here.
So, how did you first start using drawing in your coaching sessions, and what drew you to it as a tool?
Well, it's interesting because, as you mentioned, I bring both sort of the art and science parts of my brain. I've been working as an artist, drawing ever since I was a child, but I went to school for science. My parents thought that would be great if I could get, quote, a real job. And so I did the academic ladder. I did the bachelor's, the master's, the PhD, the postdoc. And I have worked in not for profit, federal government, corporate, and now with coaching, learning to be an entrepreneur. And to say all of these paths led me eventually towards creative wellness because I experienced burnout. And that is the niche that I work with women in STEM, as you mentioned, science, technology, engineering, and math. Because it's very high pressure, a lot of focus on detail, and not a lot of chance for creativity as we think about it. And it was during the pandemic, my company had landed a large government contract to produce emergency ventilators. And we were working 24/7 to get them in the hands of Canadians because this was before vaccines were readily available. And I got so blocked both at work because I was working all the time and also creatively at the time. I have a beautiful studio. I'd go in here and I'd just stare at my supplies, and I couldn't even think about taking something down. And it wasn't until I was on an endless Zoom call where I just started drawing simple shapes, just patterns and just lines. And I found my tension was subsiding. I was actually relaxing. I could feel my heart rate slowing down. I thought, there's something here. So I started looking more into art therapy and art therapy exercises. But I fell in love with coaching as well. And I thought there must be a way of bringing the forward focus, the goal focus, the mindset of coaching and using these creative tools. And so I started curating exercises and developing what I call the Creative Reset program. And a lot of what I do with my clients is, we work through various themes, or whether it's working on boundaries, relationships. And what I have them do is a series of different exercises, and then we meet to discuss them. And it was really experimenting as a scientist on myself first to see what worked, and then trying it with other women to see if they could find the benefits. And I launched a pilot over the summer with a bunch of women one-on-one, and then I've been doing another subsequent pilot with a group to test the materials. And it's interesting, the different dynamics between working obviously one-on-one versus a group, but a lot of the benefits were being seen across the board of doing these exercises.
Yeah. Interestingly, one of the things you said is that drawing can reveal insights that words sometimes hide. So, can you share an example of that from your work?
Yeah, actually, I just had a call last night with my group, and there were two exercises that I had them do. And we're heading towards the end of the program, so we're looking at setting goals for the next sort of 3 months. And there were two different exercises, and one tends to be what I call more linear, and one is more open. And so I like to sort of have both options for them to try. And so one is called the performance ladder, and you draw basically the goal you're trying to achieve at the top and the various rungs of the steps you need to get there. And the other one is a flower shape where you put the goal in the center and it's petals that help you achieve the goal. So one is called Goals in Bloom and the other one's called Performance Ladder. And the first thing I did is I asked the women on the call, which exercise spoke more to you? And so we had Team Ladder and Team Flower. And some could get into, I can wear my project management hat and really get into these steps and build my ladder. Whereas others were like, no, I like the whole centeredness, the almost like a radial approach of drawing it out. And what's happening there is they're being challenged to try different ways of thinking and expressing themselves. And they've now gone through enough of the program where they can choose to deviate a little bit, as they said. Like one woman's like, I had multiple goals, so I decided to draw myself a bouquet. And that was great because she let herself, go beyond sort of the parameters of what the exercise was. And another woman is like, I wanted a whole bunch of little step ladders. And so she did sort of similar thing. And others had multiple sides to their ladders, and one side symbolized the work side, one side symbolized family. And so she sort of leapfrogged back and forth on the rungs. And all of that was just part of the discussion of how you went about drawing. Everyone knows what a ladder looks like. Everybody knows what a flower is. But what was interesting is we started discussing where they felt resistance in doing the exercise. And with part of the exercise of doing the ladders, I actually told them to draw the rungs backwards. Start with the goal and try to reverse engineer how you'd get there. And a lot of them said that was really hard to wrap their brain around trying to work backwards from a goal because they're so used to going forwards. I need to do this today and this tomorrow and this next week. And so to have to work backwards was challenging. With another part of this, it was one woman, she's like, I had to draw all the petals the same size. And then another woman said to her, oh, I like the fact that my petals are all wonky and one's bigger because I needed to do more things in that one. And this one's like a little tiny petal because it's just a little thing. And she's like, I never thought I could make them different sizes. So there was a lot of crosstalk also about the discussion. And then, after we took time to sort of reflect on what the various goals and some of the ways of getting there is, I asked them, now that they've looked at their drawings, what's missing? What would you like to add? Where's a missing petal? Where's a missing part of your ladder? Is there a different ladder? And one of the women said, oh, it's really interesting. I didn't write family on here. And that's very important to me. And it's a petal missing from my flower. And another woman wrote volunteering. And she's like, this is really important to me. Why did I choose to exclude it? And it's often because you get in a certain frame of mind. It's like your brain, as you said, gets into that flow state. And it starts coming out really quickly. And it's not until you have that chance to reflect and discuss where you see that you might have skipped steps that you may want to add afterwards. And also when you listen to others talk about the exercises that you're like, oh, that's a great idea. I wish I'd thought of that. And now I'll write it down or draw a symbol on mine to symbolize that. So there's a lot of give and take with these exercises, I find.
Yeah, I really like that. You're helping them reveal insights that they might not have had otherwise. What do you say to a client who insists I'm not creative or I can't draw?
I'm sure you've played Pictionary with your kids. And often when I talk to clients who are saying, oh, I'm not artistic, I'm like, can you draw to the level of Pictionary? Because it's more about the process of getting your thoughts and your feelings on the page. And often I talk about these drawings becoming almost like emotional artifacts because you're getting a lot of things that aren't necessarily put into words. Maybe you're drawing how you felt today. One of the exercises I do, it's a very simple one. It's called the body scan. And basically you draw a gingerbread man or woman, and we pick colors that represent feelings of tension and stress and draw where those occur in the body. And then you can symbolize, is it a sharp, prickly feeling? Is it a scrunched up, tight, gray scribble? And then I ask them to show where peacefulness resides in the body. How does that look like? Where does grounding occur? And maybe that's through the feet, and they draw wavy green lines anchoring to the ground. And it's, again, a very simple exercise, but the nice thing is you can put away for a week and come back to it, and you can suddenly remember how you were feeling when you were doing that body scan. And it's a great way of, again, tapping into those internal feelings that we typically ignore sometimes to our detriment. Because you're just reaching for colors that just suddenly go, I feel like angry red today. I feel sad gray today. But not all colors mean that to the same people as well. It can be cultural. It can be, for some, red is celebratory and gray is peaceful. So it is very individual that way as well, too. And this is where it helped me personally as an artist. A lot of these exercises are not about creating fine art. That, in fact, is the opposite. The idea is about getting into the process of more play, right? Like if you look at kindergarten drawings, we know exactly what they are most of the time. But that's the level. It's that chance to just play, express how you feel, and as I said, Pictionary, right? Get the meaning out. And what a heart means to you may mean something different to somebody else. Or maybe you pick a red balloon and that symbolizes something. Of course, if you've watched Stephen King's It, maybe not a red balloon. But, again, a lot of visual, it's imagery, right? It's symbolism. There are a lot of things, like there's a lot of, obviously, Carl Jung is all about symbolism. And there is certainly in shared history, pictograms and so on. There's a lot of underlying visual symbols that make up our cultural makeup, but there's lots of things that just mean something to you. Maybe you love the Muppets as a kid, right? And so you love the color green because it makes you think of Kermit, right? Like your brain makes these associations as well. And then you forget about them because you've moved on until you get a chance to sort of experiment and play. So coming back to not being artistic, or I haven't drawn forever. And I was like, you don't need anything expensive. I tell them, I'm using my kids' school supplies, right? Like Crayola markers. I tell them it's meant to just be easy on yourself. Start with just pencil, if that's easier, or just pen, because you're like, oh, I don't know what to use here. But what was funny is I was working with a few women who said, I've just got pens handy. I'm just going to start with that. And then they started reaching for highlighters because they're like, I don't have any markers and I want to add color here. And they get inspired. And suddenly, they're in Michael's staring at this wall of markers going, I want all the colors now. And I say to them, like, start easy, a few colors at first. And then, pick the rainbow after that.
Yeah. When people come to coaching, it's because they have some blocks, right, that they want to overcome so they can reach their goal. And so drawing is a way to access the unconscious. And really, in order to create change, we have to access some of our unconscious because most of our behaviors and our decisions are not made fully consciously. So what kinds of coaching challenges, such as goal setting, emotional processing, big decisions, tend to benefit most from visual methods?
Well, definitely one of the exercises we do throughout the program, we have a week on boundaries. And again, the exercise sounds quite simple. It's basically, draw what you want to keep, protect, and then draw a barrier in whatever way you want to visualize. And then what you're trying to keep on the outside, right? And I often do a demonstration video just to set the tone of where they can go with it. And I drew a garden and then surrounded it with barbed wire, but with a gate, right? So I could let some things in and out, and then I put weeds on the outside. And for me, I said these weeds represent working long hours and answering emails at all times of the day, and just that trying to set boundaries, my own personal boundaries. And then, the garden was my being working on projects that lit me up and having time with family. And so I could call the garden whatever, I could call the weeds whatever, but that's how I chose to draw it. And those sort of exercises, again, work well because it makes you focus on what's important to you. And that's what a lot of coaching comes down to, is giving you that ability to prioritize what's important to you, what brings you joy, what brings you purpose, what you want less of in your life. But if you don't take time to think about it, right? Like often we go around on autopilot because we're kind of in survival mode. I go to work, I go home, I make dinner, I go to bed, I wake up, I repeat. We don't take time for ourselves, right? And I'm not saying that drawing is going to be the panacea to fix everything, but it's another outlet, right? It's another very complementary outlet to taking a walk in nature, to meditating. I think of drawing often as a way of being active meditation, right? You sort of drop into that relaxed state, which for me, I find it often hard to sit still for 10 minutes and breathe. But I can get into a relaxed state if I draw my breath, just lines up and down, and my breathing will slow. So there's that sensory feedback as well, too. And once I've relaxed, then I can go on to something else. And that's 1 or 2 minutes of just drawing lines and breathing.
It's also that repetitive nature, right? That is calming to the brain. The brain really likes repetition.
Well, definitely. I found even when I was just doing those simple shapes, doodling, and I'm not a big doodler typically. I keep thinking often, if I'm going to spend the time making art, I should be in the studio making art with a capital A as opposed to doodling. But if I was so blocked, I couldn't make art with a capital A, but I could do these exercises. And that's what let me get back to being a little more myself, which is what I was looking for.
So you're not a doodler. Many people are doodlers. And I think, is it true that in school they discourage doodling?
Oh, they definitely did. Yeah, that does get sort of ironed out of you.
Yeah, whereas doodling is calming to people. That's why they doodle.
Well, and those adult coloring books. One of the women in my group last night said she just treated herself to a new coloring book because she finds just that act of picking colors. But she said, I don't feel any pressure to make something. I can just enjoy the coloring aspect of it. And I think that's great too. If I go into my studio and I want to make something, I just want to play with paint, I'll often make collage papers because I can use them in a finished artwork, but there's no pressure to create a finished artwork. I can just enjoy the process of playing with paint and paper. So I guess that's for me, that's my doodling, is doing painting collage paper.
And you can really do that without thinking, right? And so then your brain is just working on something behind the scenes that you're not even aware of, or that's important to you while you're doing your doodling or collaging.
Definitely. It's another way of tapping into that flow state.
Yeah.
Because it's different each time. So your brain, it's not pure repetitive, but it's a low cognitive load, I guess is what you'd say.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And it does get you in the flow state, right? That's a way to get into the flow state is the repetitiveness of doodling or the collaging that you do. So, what changes have you seen in clients over time when drawing becomes part of their regular self reflection?
Well, it's interesting because I'm now following up with the women who completed the summer curriculum and doing case studies and testimonials with them. And a lot of them said that it's like I ran into one at a Christmas party that just this past week. And she thanked me so much for taking part in the program. She's like, I was really hesitant because I was super stressed and I was overloaded and I was sort of grasping at things. And this just seemed like a lifeline. And I thought, well, I'll try that because I've tried everything else and nothing is working. And she says she still refers back to the exercises. We have one called Fill Your Cup, where again, you just draw a simple cup shape and you put in the cup what you want more of in your life, whether it's you want to spend more time reading fiction, going out in nature. And she's like, the picture just jumps into my mind and I know that I'm not filling my cup and I need to take time to do that. And she's like, I do that all the time now. I think about what do I need? And it's obviously talking and reflecting is part of the coaching as well. But it's become like a visual anchor for her, a touchstone. And she was saying that for a few different exercises that she goes back to them. And she will try to, draw out some boundaries for herself or goals. She's looking at setting new goals for the new year. And you hope that you have effect on people after you've left. And it was just very fulfilling to me to hear how much one, she was affected by it, and two, she was still using it and finding benefits for it.
That is really great news. So, can you talk about the types of symbols, shapes, or patterns clients often use and what meaning they sometimes uncover through them?
Well, another one that we do is imagining your ideal day, and you can draw whatever you want on there. And I would say a lot of folks drew the beach and the sunshine. And whether that's just, again, a cultural thing, we just think we need to be in this oasis. And then what's interesting is after one of the women had drawn this and we were talking about it, she's like, you know what? I actually really hate being at the beach, but I love the sunshine. But there's this pressure to go to the beach. And she's like, no, I just want the sunshine. And the sun as a symbol came up a lot for people. Whenever there was a feeling of being happy, content, often the shorthand would be a sun. And that came up. Whereas on the flip side, if somebody was feeling a lot of stress and tension, it would show up as dark, tight scribbles, almost like if you took a ball of yarn and just tugged it in all different directions, these dark, curly snarls would show up, and that represented confusion and stress and anxiety. And so, yes, they're very simple, happy sunshine, dark gray cloud, but again, they're shorthands, right? A symbol, they always say a picture is worth 1,000 words. But again, the pictures do mean different things to different people. There's some universality, but also individual flavors to them as well.
Are people ever surprised by what they drew?
Yes. We had a bridge exercise where you can draw whatever type of bridge you want and basically where you are on the shore, where you want to get to, and what the bridge will let you get over the obstacles. And I had one woman draw the most rickety bridge, rope bridge, wood planks are missing, rapids below her. And she's like, why did I draw such a rickety bridge? Like I could have drawn any bridge. But that's what symbolized how she was feeling. And she was like, I'm looking at the rapids and I don't know how to swim. Why am I drawing all these things self-imposed in front of my way? These are my perceptions of what's blocking me. And so talking through it, she's like, okay, I'm going to draw a few more planks into my bridge and I'm going to fill it in to get me to my goal. But that was how she chose to interpret how she was feeling to get to this where she wanted to be. These were the obstacles that were facing her. And, after we sort of looked at it, we're like, she's like, I'm the one getting in my own way. Like, I'm not giving myself enough planks to get across this. So it's a lot of unconscious comes up.
Yeah. I love that story. So for clients who feel stuck in repetitive thinking, what have you noticed happens when they start drawing instead of talking?
It's choosing a different part of your brain. Like there's a lot of times where it's hard to put things into word. Like I personally know the worth of journaling, but I find it very hard to sit down and write a sentence after another sentence. Whereas if I can jot down a few pictures and a few notes, and I find it's almost like visual journaling. Like it's not necessarily just drawing a full picture. It's sort of like an infographic, I guess, almost. It's like a shorthand to my brain to go, okay, what am I feeling? What's getting out? And when I sort of give these prompts to the women in my group, it lets them kind of look at things from different directions, which it's sometimes hard to see the answer when they're in the jar looking at the label from the inside, right? You can't see the outside of the label. Whereas when you draw, it taps into a different part of your brain than the more linear, logical, it plays back and forth, these two sides, I find. But then you can analyze what you've drawn after the fact and you can reflect on it. And then you can choose to go back in and add more. So it's iterative, also that process. So it gets you out of that ruminating state because you can go into the flow state, draw, come out of the flow state, reflect, go back in, and it can be just for yourself, or you can share it with others and get their insights as well too. Yeah, that's a nice thing with it being on the paper. It's a visual thing.
Yeah. So do they keep like a drawn journal so they can see their progression over time?
Oh yeah, quite a few. When I was doing these case study calls, follow-up calls with them, they said, oh, I've got them all right here. But when I set up the call with them initially to do it, I'm like, computer paper's fine. You don't need to go buy a fancy sketchbook. But often they start treating themselves to nicer supplies, nicer books, because they put the value in them. There's another exercise that we did in the very beginning where you write a phrase that's meaningful to you and whatever that phrase is, and then you just decorate it. You can make it different fonts, you can make it big letters, small letters, and the idea is that you post it somewhere that it reminds you. It's like a mini mantra, mini visual mantra. And a few of the women, when I was on the call with them, said, I've got it right here. I deserve rest. And that reminds them that it's a statement that means something to them, and they put it somewhere visually that reminds them it's important to them as well.
Yeah. So as I mentioned before our conversation, you're a student in my neuroscience school. So I'm curious, how has what you've learned about neuroscience become a part of your coaching?
Well, when I first started listening to this podcast, I was thrilled because I was like, this is exactly what I'm looking for. Is as a scientist, I didn't study neuroscience, but I did a little bit of psychology, a little bit of cognitive, and I always wanted to learn more about it. I love to know what the brain is doing behind the scenes. And there's a book that came out a couple of years ago called Your Brain on Art, and it's Susan Magdalene and Ivy Ross. And it just literally blew my mind because I'm like, finally, here's the science that's happening behind the creativity. And when I heard your podcast about the neuroscience behind coaching, I was like, this is perfect. And then I found out you had the school and the program. And now when I do these exercises going forward is I want to add more of the neuroscience and explain what the brain is doing while they're doing the exercises. I had ideas, but now I have more evidence of what the brain is doing while they're doing the exercises and why they're so effective. And I think that's going to be terrific because so many of the women I work with are scientists, engineers, high tech, finance, and they love empirical data. They hear creativity and they think, oh, that's too woo for me. And if I can sort of underpin the creativity and the benefits, let alone, all of the anecdotal evidence I've been gathering, I think that's going to make a very terrific argument about why this type of coaching is so effective and different, right? That's the other thing is when you're starting out in a different area, you're kind of out there pioneering things. So it's nice to have some data to rely on as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear that what you're learning at the neuroscience school has made a difference in your coaching. So finally, as we wrap up, for coaches who want to start experimenting with drawing, what's a simple first exercises they can try in their next session?
I definitely like the bridge exercise. That's one that intuitively seems to land very well with all the women. And it's, again, basically where you are, present day, that's one side of the shore, and where you want to get to, and whatever that symbolizes. That's that goal setting. That's the forward looking. And you draw your bridge and whatever obstacles you're trying to overcome. And I think, we often use the bridge analogy in coaching verbally. And I think a lot of coaches will find it really effective. Even just Pictionary level doodle is super effective.
Thank you. That's a perfect point to wrap up our conversation. So what's the best way for listeners to learn more about you and your work?
Easiest way is to go to my website. It's mindartwellness.com. There I have links to my newsletter that goes out weekly. And also I have a free 5-day creative reset challenge. It's an email challenge. You get an email each day with a little prompt, a video, and some reflective questions. And so it gets you a taster of what the program is like.
So Lexi, thank you so much for your time in making this an interesting discussion.
Oh, it's been my pleasure to be here, and it's been my pleasure to be one of your students.
Thank you. So to everyone listening, thank you for joining Lexi and me today. I hope this conversation inspires you to bring more creativity and curiosity into your coaching, not as decoration, but as a powerful doorway to deeper insight. Drawing reminds us that change doesn't always begin with the right words. Sometimes it begins with a line, a shape, a gesture, something simple that opens a much larger truth. As you work with your clients this week, I encourage you to experiment. Try one small visual exercise. Offer a pen and paper. Invite them to explore what they can't yet articulate. You might be surprised by what emerges, and so might they. And remember, the brain is always ready to learn and reorganize, and every stroke of the pen has the potential to shift a pattern, reveal clarity, or spark a new possibility. I'm Dr. Irena O'Brien, and you've been listening to Neuroscience of Coaching. You can find out more about me at neuroscienceschool.com. If you're listening to this episode in the winter of 2025, my brain-based coaching mastery program starts in January. Be sure to look for that on the website. I'd love to have you as part of it. Until my next episode, remember to work with your brain, not against it.